See how long this lasts.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Second Floor Experience. This is the first telepodcast we've ever tried doing. So we'll see how your
See how this
experience
goes.
is on the other side of this. But Zach is still in Florida, so we're just we're trying to get a pod in, and we kind of honestly needed to do our first one anyway, just to see how to do it.
Yeah.
Just like a test run.
It's funny because I think people usually, when they do a like remote podcast or something, it's over a software.
Yeah.
Where like you're recording like through your laptop or something, like almost like a Zoom call.
Yeah.
But we're doing it a little bit different.
We are.
Because it's like we're recording it, but like I'm talking to you on FaceTime.
Yes.
So, but I think
quality
it should turn out.
purposes.
Yeah. I think it should turn out pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely more editing on your side of things for sure, but I think it.
But not really.
minimizes-
It like wouldn't change anything. Like it should be the
that's
same
true.
for.
That's true. It definitely minimizes, hopefully, the amount of issues, because it's just the same thing that we normally do, but it's just only a setup for one person.
Yeah.
So, for each of us, it's a setup for one person.
It'll be
interesting.
If anything, we'll have the audio. So
yeah, true.
But
it only took like 5 hours for me to Dropbox you the freaking last. The last.
I can't believe
video.
that, dude.
Yeah.
What's the deal with Dropbox, bro? Because somebody get Dropbox together. Because
can somebody introduce Dropbox to AI, please?
Gosh. Okay, dude. So here, I have a question, like off the bat.
Okay.
So what has? Oh, I guess we haven't really talked about your paper.
No.
On podcasts yet.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Because I was gonna ask you like what like the response has been from, if you've had any, from people in general. Because I know you've like put it out, so
yeah, dude. Honestly, so yeah, I did post on Instagram. I didn't really have anybody like reach out over Instagram about it, I would say, but I would say
really?
Taylor. No, yeah, not at all. It's a pretty like niched thing. So
it is, yeah.
I feel like I just was like, I don't know, I don't really care. Like I'm proud of this, and I just want to put it out there. Like I'm curious to see what other people think. But Taylor read it. She thought it was really cool and interesting. I feel like no one really thinks it's as interesting as I do. My sister did. Or you maybe. My sister read it, and she definitely really liked it a lot. She gave me some great feedback on that, and I feel like I haven't like got to really talk about it with my parents yet, so that maybe they'll have some feedback. Honestly, like after doing it, I realized that I think it was more for me than anything else. Like it really was just like a personal, almost like therapeutic type project in a sense. I've never been like captured by such like furious curiosity. Even at SAGU, I would say like there were times of that, but like to be able to sit down and write 30 pages and just like not feel like it was difficult, but just to be able to like put that many hours into the research and the writing was something I just haven't experienced before. It was just a really wild. It felt like very natural. I think because it had been building for so long, like probably about 4 years, I've been contemplating a lot of these things. And so to actually have verbiage and research, and at least, I don't know, I felt like I had some clarity finally on a lot of questions that I'd been having for a long time. Definitely didn't answer everything, but I feel like I have a lot more clarity, I would say.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is. I feel like writing something like that it's just nice because one, you kind of get it out of your head,
Mm-hmm.
and like, yeah, I don't know. It's nice because you are just able to have like a clear stance on it.
Yeah.
Because beforehand it's like you have all this thought about
Mm-hmm.
all. I mean, you did the QAnon, you did the
Mm-hmm.
uh I mean, even like cults.
Yeah.
You did Christian nationalism, Bonhoeffer, Nazis. Like, there's so many topics there.
I
Dallas
broke a
Willard,
lot of rules. I
like,
broke a lot of
yeah.
like academic
But
rules writing this
but
paper.
like from all the conversations that we've had, there was clearly a connection between all of them,
There
and
is.
so it was hard to like it was hard to just to like verbalize that
Mm-hmm.
connection. So to be able to lay it out into a paper
Yeah.
and just have it all out there, that's really nice.
That's very true.
So
Yeah, I definitely have my thoughts like much better, uh, like organized much better now. I think that's what a paper helps you do is like helps you kind of organize your thoughts and get it out on paper, like you said. Um,
yeah,
Even just for myself too, of like, okay, if something crazy happens in the next 10 years and I am faced with a Bonhoeffer situation, like what would I do?
yeah,
That was a big thing for me. Um, and then but also what do I do now? Right? So this is like what's so fascinating about Bonhoeffer's story is it's really difficult to decide when you decide to act.
yes,
That's the toughest part is like where's the line? And Hitler did such a great job at gaslighting people into never like he would push just enough to where it wasn't quite painful enough for you to take action, but he gained a little bit of ground until
yeah,
it was like literally until it was too late. And so it's like Bonhoeffer had a little bit of a different story because his family was very affluent and well connected. And so they actually knew what was going on in Poland with the concentration camps, like a lot of times before anybody.
hmm.
And so he knew what was going on, right? And so him being willing to stand up like that, it's definitely a nuanced situation for sure. But I think, and there are some crazy parallels to right now. I really enjoyed reading Letters to the American Church. That was awesome.
Mm.
Um, which is, dude, it was written by the same guy who wrote the Bonhoeffer biography. So that
Oh,
was crazy.
really?
Yeah, the same author, Eric Metaxas. Yeah, he wrote he wrote that book, Letters to the American Church, after writing the Bonhoeffer biography because of how freaked out he got on all the parallels. And
Wow.
so you'll kind of notice that like so I wrote the paper like in different at different time like different sections of different times at different times, and so it's kind of out of order.
Yeah.
And so like there's a part where I talk about like the response to Christian nationalism, and my view actually kind of changed after writing that, but I kept it in, where I kind of like went a little bit. I kind of went like hard in the paint a little bit there, and was talking about how like, you know, would Jesus be doing these types of Christian nationalistic things? I don't think so, and here's why, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like I kind of took more of like almost like a fatalistic moralist type. Well, it's just going to happen, so don't like get in the way or whatever.
Yes.
Uh, in that at that time, and then the more I started reading, the more I realized that I really couldn't like live with myself in that position because I was like, well, you're only taking that position because things are okay right now, generally, comparatively to Nazi Germany. And I was like, well, okay. So, because honestly, what changed my mind was Letters to the American Church because he's like, don't you guys see how the things that we're allowing right now are actually really, really similar to the things that, like morally, to the things that the Germans started to allow. And it's just like a different flavor. and we just like come up with different excuses. And so it's like that really
Mm.
woke me up to be like, oh shoot, okay, so by actually not saying anything, you end up empowering tyranny. And that's where the whole
Yeah.
like compounding silence
Dude,
idea came
that's what I was
from.
going to talk about. Because I reread your paper today to like,
Oh dang, okay.
yeah, because I wanted to have it fresh in my mind. And like rereading that section, like that's where like one of the, like that part, dude, when you talk
Dude,
about
so
silence, like the
powerful.
power of it, and like that quote. There's a couple quotes in there that you did that I mean I kind of want to pull them up if I can, but
Dude.
like
The fact, dude,
it's
finding some of that research was so crazy. Like the lady who met Hitler at her college and went
yes,
on to,
dude.
she lived through Nazi Germany and then went on to study like socioculturalism or whatever she studied. Like it was like social
Yeah,
psychology, I think. Um, Reading her stuff really changed my mind a lot because it changed my perspective. Because I was like, how can I read this lady's work who lived through Nazi Germany, met Hitler, watched her country go through this, and then be like, yeah, her, like, I don't agree.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's a term for that too. There's a term for um, where you're kind of on the other side of history, and you're looking at, you're looking back and you're judging based off of what you now know. And it's just such a compromised position because you really don't know how you would have handled it. Because that's what I realized. I was like,
yeah,
I view Nazi Germany from backwards to forwards. And reading Bonhoeffer's biography, I witnessed it forwards to now, like forwards to history, right? Like right now we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, Hitler was a terrible person because he killed the Jews. Therefore, I can't
yeah,
believe that the Germans were complicit, right? But
yes,
reading Bonhoeffer, it was like, oh, like Hitler was Germany's savior at first.
yeah,
And then it's like you start to see what Hitler was saying. And it was like, dude, this sounds like amazing stuff. Bring jobs back, bring like national pride back. I mean, Germany was really hurting. I didn't realize how bad they were really hurting before World War II.
yeah, yeah,
I had no idea the inflation got that bad. Like it was really bad. And so his ability, I had no idea that he had a coup like 10 years before and then went to jail and then came back. Like his rise to power took so long. And that's what
mm,
freaked me out the most because in my head, it had always been overnight. Like
yeah,
overnight, he got elected and then he like took over power like a dictator and like
yeah.
almost like he
I feel like
blitzkrieged.
that's how a lot of people
Yes. I,
like
I
perceive
I
it.
imagine it like he blitzkrieged the political side, just like he did the
Mm,
war. But that's not what happened. It was a crescendo. Like it was a very slow rise to power, and then he like grabbed it all. He grabbed it all, and then he like kind of gaslighted the German people for a while, and then
yeah,
he started the war, and then he gaslighted the world because the world was like, "Hey, you should not do that." And he's like, "I promise it's only Poland," and then like,
yeah,
"Oh, I promise it's only like Czechoslovakia or whatever," and then like, and then he started doing things. He hid it really well for a long time that he was like taking the Jews to Poland because no one knew what was going on. And so when
yeah,
I started reading it from that perspective, I was like, oh, okay, so this is a lot more complicated than I
yeah.
thought.
Well, it's crazy because that it makes more sense that it happened that way because if his rise to power really was slow like that, then it makes sense why it was easy for people to stay quiet
Yeah.
and why it was
Oh
easy
yeah.
for people for him to just to push the envelope a
Hmm.
little bit further until it was too late.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
if you're a German speaking out against it, your fellow Germans will look at you and be like, "What are you against like Germany's
yeah,
success?" That's
yeah,
exactly how they would have perceived it.
yeah,
So when you make that parallel to right now, it's a crazy thing. It like
yeah,
really blew my bubble because I was like,
yeah.
I was like, oh wait, okay, so now if you speak out against Christian nationalism, you're almost seen as someone who doesn't like is unpatriotic. Or
Yes.
someone who just not you don't have to be like totally against it, or just saying like, hey, maybe we should be careful about like
Yeah.
what we're doing here. You're
Which
really painted in a different light.
yeah. Which is why it's so like the reason why it's so dangerous for a Christian in America is because America is painted as this it's painted as a nation under God, right? So like
Yeah,
for a lot of people, if you stand against America, then like
yeah,
you're essentially in their eyes standing
yeah,
against God.
yeah.
And that's
So
just very
that opened up a whole other can of worms for me too,
yes.
because I had always just kind of lived under that assumption, and that's why I started reading Andrew Whitehead's book about American idolatry, and that was
Yeah.
crazy. Um, just kind of seeing like from the other side of things how, oh, like this is how that kind of ideology becomes. It kind of slips into your heart, and it's really difficult to parse out. But what's crazy though is that what blows my mind is how much of a theological powerhouse Germany was at the time too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, I mean, I would think you would call Germany like a Christian nation too. Maybe not the exact same way America is, in the sense of like being founded on American values, or I'm sorry, Christian values.
Yeah.
But I mean, the amount of like theological minds that they had is wild. Like Karl Barth, like you just go down the line.
Yeah.
But a lot of them were progressive, like very progressive, like liberal
Mm.
theologians, except for Barth and Bonhoeffer for the most part.
Dude, Bonhoeffer, I'm like only 2 chapters in to his Cost of Discipleship book, and
Dang, I'm
dude,
jealous. I'm jealous. Of
dude,
course, your
like
dad has those books. Of
I
course.
know, dude, the amount of conviction I have felt,
Really?
dude, in just those 2 chapters. It's just so good.
He's an
Gosh,
insane writer, man. He really
he
is. He
is,
just wrote.
dude.
He wrote
Like,
all the time. He just wrote all the time.
yeah, but yeah, okay. So I'll read this.
Okay.
Uh, I won't read the whole quote, but I'll read what you wrote right after, where it says. Is that you said that the gluttony of silence is that you seemingly don't have to pick a side, but just as overeating eventually leads to a host of health issues like diabetes, heart failure, and organ failure, so total silence increases the social risk of anyone who does not speak up, compounding the power of tyranny. As Eric Metaxas concludes,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
As the price to speak rises, still fewer speak out, which further causes the price to speak to rise, so that fewer people yet will speak out until the whole culture or nation is silenced. Gosh, dude. And he says this is what happened in Germany. So that's where I feel like even if you don't like, okay, if you're in like a country, like you're in the time, it's like Nazi Germany or whatever, there's like a big tyranny in power,
Yeah.
whatever, tyrant in power, right? Like, and you're not sure whether or not to, like, where that line is to fight back or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like at the very least, like, speaking out is always like a necessity.
Yeah.
I feel like
It's at least a
I feel
first
like you
step.
can yes, but it's a necessary step.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't speak out, then that's
You're literally
how
complicit to
exactly,
like,
yeah, yes,
dude. It's just it is so wild to like when I started reading about that. Even honestly, I'd say what scares me the most about everything that I sort of went through in that research was like the stuff from 1984, like the stuff from the cult psychology,
yeah,
and how powerful that is, and like doublethink.
mm-hmm.
and like that was probably one of my favorite parts, was like actually putting in quotes from 1984 by George Orwell and talking
Yeah.
about those
Yeah.
things, like war is ignorance, or war is, it says war is peace, ignorance is strength, and freedom is slavery, and talks about how like doublethink is holding things that you know to be false as true in your mind at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whew, that is just like one of the most chilling things. And this is the thing I realized too, is like, yeah, my papers focus more on like critiquing the right, but and I did that because I think what we've seen politically is that a lot of the left progressive side is more gung ho on limiting freedom of speech, I would say, right now.
Yes. Yes.
And so, like, that's obviously a huge danger. So I
Yeah.
didn't really focus on that too much because I feel like it's a bit obvious. And
Yeah.
what I really
Yeah.
was after was like, okay, like we're not like if you're conservative, you're not innocent in this.
Yeah.
Like we have our own blind spots, and I was really curious as to like what are my blind spots, and what's the danger that everyone just kind of like sees with this sort of like pseudo patriotism now as like morally good, basically.
Yeah.
And I argue against that. I think that we don't hold ourselves sometimes as the same standards as we hold other people, and especially people that disagree with us. And at least I
Yeah.
know I don't sometimes. And so I was writing this as a way of critiquing myself and being like, okay,
Yeah.
what are the ways that I am falling victim to like this, again, this like conspiracy of silence in theology, in politics, in evangelism, in discipleship. And like, what are the ways that I'm just like, well, that's just not my fight, or like, well, like making these excuses. And then on the flip side, it's like, well, how is this sort of nationalist rhetoric paving like a stage for a very charismatic person to take control if they wanted to, and cause some serious damage, or not maybe do it on like Hitler obviously had a very pointed purpose to, he really wanted to kill the Jews. But I think a lot of people could argue that he thought that was what was best for Germany. And I think like he was genuinely convinced of that. And so that's why we have this, there's this idea that, well, especially with pastors too, that we've been critiqued on, I think, is like, well, they're genuine. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't matter. What matters is like Hitler was genuine in his pursuit to make Germany great, but he did so through massacring the Jews. So we need to like separate this idea of people being authentic from people being genuinely good and practicing like good intellectual habits.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing I realized throughout this paper was that we can have the best intentions of like, we want free speech, we want like freedom of religion, we want like all the amazing things that we enjoy in this country. And yes, we always have things to work on as a country too, but let's not do that like at the expense of like giving someone almost like a cult like power over us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's just,
for sure.
It's almost like you're like putting down one sin to like pick up another, or like you're putting down one weight just to pick up another. And I don't think it's like that big right now, but I could see it in the next, like especially the next election cycle, or like the next big event that happens. There's a lot of triggers that could happen.
Yeah. Okay, 1 second. The camera just overheated, so.
Nice.
Dang it.
It's all right.
I need to.
You can cut this part out anyway. It's fine.
Yeah. I know. I just need to remember what I was going to say. Let's see. Oh, frick. Okay.
Yeah, those little cameras with the little batteries, they can't do much.
I know. And dude, I've been having to, I guess there's a setting on it that is set to like it only will record in 5-minute intervals. So I keep having to repress record.
Dang, that's tough.
Yeah, gotta love it, dude. Okay. I wonder if I can switch that really quick. Come on. Okay, just one more second. All right, whatever. It'll be fine. All right. Gosh. Okay. What was the last thing you said?
I was talking about just sort of like critiquing our own blind spots and how this type of stuff that I was writing about, like, really, I feel like is not going to be relevant. Maybe until like a few years from now.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say I think it is. I feel like it's an important paper, or like, you know, even if like not a ton of people read it, it's an important topic for believers, especially because I don't think it's any secret that Christians, like believers, like tend to be more conservative in general. Like in general,
For sure.
I think that's like a pretty known thing. So it is very easy, like especially when you talk about, you know, being silent or like speaking out, all those things. The First Amendment, like the right to free speech, is such a core part of America.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, that's such a great and such a necessary human right. But again, like because that is so foundational to America, then it's like it only drives people to fight for America even harder. You know what I mean?
Right. That's a good point.
Which isn't a bad thing. Like, you should fight.
Again, that's the tough part.
Yes, that's the tough part. That's where it's just that like really fine line, because it's like it's either way. Whether if you're a Christian and you lean towards the left, you're progressive, you like, you know, I don't know, are big on like socialist movements, all that stuff, right? Okay, that's fine. But if you're a Christian and you allow those like social movements, all those ideals and everything to come before your like basically before like uh the kingdom, like,
Right.
and before your belief in God and everything, right? Like if those things, if you idolize those,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the wrong. And it's the same thing for the right as well. Like just
Yes.
because America was founded on Christian principles,
Mm-hmm.
like doesn't mean, obviously doesn't mean that America is the kingdom of God, or that
Right.
you can treat it like it is. So
Right.
like on either side, like as a believer, that's why I really like that you I think it was the last section before your conclusion that you titled
Mm-hmm.
it the narrow road.
Mm-hmm.
Like as a Christian, you have to be able to walk that narrow road
Yeah.
and stay true to I mean, like we've said this before on previous episodes. Like I have very strong political stances like
Yeah.
I will argue for. I'll stand
Right.
by them, but I have to be like I know I have to be extremely careful to not let those things come before my relationship with God, or like
Mm-hmm.
my uh I mean, yeah, like before my service to the kingdom,
Mm.
right? And I can't pretend that me fighting for those things is service to the kingdom, because
Mm.
it's just not, it's not the same. Like if you really want to stand for God, it's not, like we talked about before, it's not going to battle in Instagram comments, or it's not
Yeah.
like it's not, I mean, very rarely is it going to like to a protest or anything like that.
Right.
It's taking care of the poor and
Yeah.
oppressed. It's serving people who, the lonely, the people who are in
Mm.
need. Like that's what it means
Mm.
to serve God. And that's what it means. That's like literally what it means to fight for the kingdom of God.
Mm.
That's how you that's how like you wage war as a believer.
Yes. Dude, that's a great point, man. Um, were there any other things about the paper that like stuck out to you, or particular parts you enjoyed or didn't enjoy?
I like
Any
what
like
gets
any other thoughts, I guess?
yeah, like what, like everything, okay, everything I just said, right? Like I still, like what gets me is I just wonder, like obviously there's the question of like what would Jesus do, right?
Yeah.
If he was here today. But I wonder what would Jesus do if he was in Germany, like during the
Mm.
Nazis.
Hmm.
And I don't know. Like, that's just like a pretty like open-ended question, but
No, yeah.
I wonder how far he would have gone to stand against the Nazis and Hitler,
Yeah.
or if he would have at all.
Man, it's such a good question, and it's really tough because I think that's what Bonhoeffer really wrestled with, and I
Yes.
think talked it extensively, or wrote extensively about how it was his personal decision to take an active role in a conspiracy against Hitler, and he
Yeah.
believed that one thing I loved that Bonhoeffer did was he didn't prescribe action. He just did it. Like he could have
Yeah.
easily told the confessing church, "You guys need to all become spies. You guys need to fight back against Hitler, or else you're not doing God's will." And that would have been like a blatant error, I feel like.
Yeah.
But he knew that what he did was not going to be understood by almost anyone. But it was
Yeah.
a big time personal conviction that he had because of his closeness with the Lord and his
Yes.
work and as a as a doctorate and postdoc work. He could not stand by and watch these things happen.
Yeah.
And so it's a really tough line because it's like Jesus also didn't stand for injustice.
And
But
neither did
like
God. Like
right, and
in the Old Testament, yeah.
now
Like you
did
can't
God,
forget
right?
that. Yeah. Yeah.
And there, I think I wrote about that in the paper, was like we can't run away from the fact that like the Romans, I wouldn't say that they were on the same level as Hitler because I think there's just so many differences.
Yeah.
Like the Romans basically were just like tolerating the Jews, right?
Yeah.
Like they were just
Yeah.
like, hey, we conquered you. You can practice your own religion. The Germans were not doing that to the Jews.
Yeah.
They were not doing that. So it, like in that sense, it's
Yeah.
very different. But
Yeah.
in another sense too, I think Jesus would have been critiquing the church much more than he was critiquing the government. And I say that
Yes.
because that's exactly what the Pharisees expected Jesus to do.
Yes.
Was to critique the Roman emperor, the Roman empire, and
Yeah.
and liberate them, right? Like physically. And Jesus did pretty much the opposite in every sense. He went after the Pharisees. And the only time he showed violence was flipping tables in the temple instead of going to war with Rome. And that's not at all what they had expected him to do. And so if I take that same lens and I put it over Nazi Germany, I'm like, okay, like I don't think Jesus would have been like a
military general.
Like, he would not have been a military conspiratorial general towards Hitler. Like I don't think that would have been the case. But I think what he would have done is he would have, like what Dallas Willard says it so well, like ravished the church with the kingdom of God. And I think by doing that, because the church was in such disarray during this time, that I think by doing that, it would have prompted maybe like many of the SS and many of like the German leaders to feel like powerful convictions, just like he did to, I think Cornelius. Jesus did to Cornelius, right? Like the Roman guard. Am I getting that right? I hope I'm getting that right. I think that's his name. Whatever the Roman official was, right? Like Jesus made a powerful, impactful impression on him, and you can't deny that had a chain reaction probably in that Roman official's circle of influence, right?
Yes.
So it's like, that's that's the dichotomy, right? Is like Jesus goes after the spiritual when you think he's going to go after the physical.
Yes, dude.
And so like he would have gone after the SS and he would have gone after like the officers because those people would have been the most despised as the war went on. They were like the worst of the SS were like the worst of the worst of German. They committed the most atrocities and they did it like psychotically, willingly for Hitler. And so he would have gone after those people with extreme love, extreme grace, extreme forgiveness, just like he went after the tax collectors who were also hated, right, in the Jewish society. And he, I think, would have transformed them from the inside out, which I think would have had a really powerful effect on the war because they would go back to their regiments or whatever, and they would have had an impact on their soldiers.
Yeah.
Right. The generals would have an impact on their generals. Right. And it's like, then, maybe they would have made decisions out of that conviction to take a physical attack against Hitler, maybe similar to like what Bonhoeffer did. And I mean, there was an attack on Hitler, the failed bomb attack on Hitler. So I think that like that could have manifested in a physical retaliation, but I just think I can't be intellectually honest and say that Jesus would have done something like that directly.
Yeah. I think you're totally right in saying that that he would have been more harsh on the church at the time, for sure, because I think what totally backs that up is scripture, like all throughout scripture, from obviously the gospels where Jesus is scrutinizing the religious leaders more than anybody in the religious establishment, but not just Jesus in the gospels, but all throughout the Old Testament. Like you have the if you read Amos, right, and like God is basically telling the Israelites, it's almost like sarcastic in a sense, but like he's judging all these different nations around Israel, right? And so you can imagine the Israelites hearing this, like, yeah, like that nation sucks. But then like by the end of it, it's like God zeroes in on Israel, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but you guys know better than all these other nations
Right.
because you have the law,
Yes.
and
Oh, that's
he
such a good point.
judges them like threefold, like and
Yeah.
he just like lays into like you guys, he just lists off like all these things that they're not obeying him.
So, gosh, you
So
bring up such a good
yeah,
point, Zach, because I didn't have a lot of time. I didn't make a choice to get into that too much. Um, but I did kind of touch on the almost like idolatrous worship of Martin Luther in the German
mm,
church.
mm,
Like
mm.
they saw Bonhoeffer wrote about it a lot. Like they saw Martin Luther as like their hero, and when in fact he was not that great of a guy in a lot of senses, and a lot of his like anti-Semitic work towards the end of his life was used to gaslight the church, to
Yeah,
literally like brutalize Jews, which is crazy to think about.
yeah, that's crazy, dude.
But Bonhoeffer writes, I think he actually did a sermon, and I mean he kind of like writes about it afterwards, and he's talking about how I think it was Reformation Day at the church, and
Mm,
he said that so many people there were only there because they were proud to be Lutheran. They were proud to be part of like the church that Luther founded
interesting.
instead of the church that Jesus founded. And that
Mm,
that type of idolatry is what led to the division in the church when Hitler did come to power.
yeah,
And that division led to a lot of, I would say, like paralysis, where people
yeah,
just like there was not there was not a unified front on the church's end, and so they were not able to like speak out against Hitler as a united front because they were too worried about fighting amongst themselves. And so
yes,
that's where like that whole idea of American idolatry comes in, because it's like, where do we in church oftentimes idolize different things, maybe different leaders, right? Maybe different ideologies. Um, and we, maybe we say we follow Jesus, but our actions and our words and our heart kind of betray us a little bit.
yeah,
And we really end up like following this person and then just putting our own beliefs on them. And
yes,
I think that's like really similar to what the Germans did for Martin Luther. And Bonhoeffer pointed that out, and I think a lot of his like his writings, you may come across it in the book, I'm not sure. Um, Sort of are like and his sermon was appealing to the German people of like, hey, wake
yeah,
up. Who do you serve? That's what it was like. It was a who do you serve type of message. If you serve
mm-hmm,
Christ, you have to point out these uh, injustices, right?
yeah,
But if you serve Luther, it's like a cop out. You're being idolatrous or whatever, and people did not like that. That's for sure.
yeah, yeah. Gosh, man, that's just so like it's so crazy because it's just crazy how everything like always comes back full circle because all like dude, all that just ties so well into the divine conspiracy and like what we've talked about so much in here
Yeah.
because it's so easy like as a Christian to get caught up in the establishment and like your whatever your home church is, whatever, or like whatever
Mm.
establishment you're a part of. And for the Germans, it was being a Lutheran, right? Like their
Yeah.
identity was caught up in being a Lutheran instead of just the kingdom of God, like
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus taught. It's just crazy. It's crazy how it all ties together.
It isn't. I regularly had my mind blown, pretty much every time I like
Yeah.
started writing.
Dang. But dude, I'm gonna try to have my paper done by the time I come back.
I would love to
But
read it, dude.
but I'm taking a different approach on it, dude. I'm testing this out.
Okay.
It's gonna be I think I'm trying this. I'm not sure how it's gonna go. If I don't like it, I'll probably rewrite it or something. But I'm taking like a less academic approach
Mm-hmm.
where it's more almost kind of like storytelling.
Ooh.
But still academic, you know? Yeah. So
for sure.
So probably not like a ton of footnotes, or it may like maybe not any, but just like telling the story and explaining it as I go. So
I love that.
We'll see. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm pumped for that.
Dude, I'm pumped to read it, bro. You're a great writer. I think one thing that I struggled with writing this paper was like, I was like, oh, it has to be this and it has to be that. And then I was like, no, you know what? It doesn't. Like, I can do what I want.
Dude, you are a great writer, bro.
Thanks, man.
Like you're like the flow.
Yeah.
And all the verbiage. It was good, dude.
I try not to make it like too sort of like intellectual. I hate when people just like throw
like big words around for no reason.
And I'm like, I don't want to take time to look that word up. Just tell me what it means.
Yes, I agree.
So I tried to make it readable, I guess, for anyone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think I think I'm going to put it in an email and write to Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Espinoza and Dr. Rosedal.
Really?
And I think I'm going to ask them to read it, but I think I'm also going to ask them to like be on the podcast.
Dude.
See what they think.
Okay, that would actually be sick though. That'd be sick if they like have the paper as well.
I think
like
so.
Going into
I think it can really be
going into the podcast.
I think it could really be fun.
Man. And we would have plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you asking me about it, man. It's cool to like talk about it more.
Yeah, dude. I think I'm gonna read it. I'm probably gonna read it a third time before I come back.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang, dude.
I want to like.
Yeah,
and I want to, dude. I need to figure out how to get it. Can you like? I mean, I don't know why I'm talking about this on the podcast, but can you email it to me? Because I want to read it on my laptop. Because like reading it on my phone just like sucks sometimes because it's so small. But yeah, I want to soak it in.
I mean, I can definitely do that. You can also, if you don't want to wait on me, you can email it to yourself from your phone and then pull it up on your laptop.
Very true. Very true.
Well, we're at about 50 minutes or so if you want to wrap it up.
Yeah, dude.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and thanks for being a part of the first telepodcast for the Second Floor Experience. Hope you enjoyed. We will try to leave a link to the paper in the description if you want to read it. And send us your feedback. Send us your comments. Email us. Let us know what you think. Agree, disagree. Write your own paper. Send it to us. We'd love to read it.
That'd be sick.
And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Second Floor Experience. Merry Christmas.
Peace.
I want to talk to you. Not now. Later. No, now.